Hi everyone, this is going to be my November 2024 wrap up, which is gonna be very late. Also, apologies for any flickering. I'm using like my brother's old ring light and it's a little bit of a suspicious setup, but you know, we make do with what we have. That flickering might actually really start to bother me. Anyways, so I wanted to go over the books that I read in November and then let y'all know what I'm reading right now and what I maybe have planned for the end of December now that it's literally late December. Yeah. And maybe early January as well. So, here, let me get all these books. These are pretty much the books that I read this month. They're like backwards, but whatever. I always see people do that. So the first book that I read this month was Dope Sick by Beth Macy. My library takes off all the book covers, so it's a little ugly. I'll probably add like an image here of what the cover usually is. But yeah, so that Dope Sick was a recommendation that I got from a professor in a sociology course that I took. It's not what I usually would read, I would say, even though I do, I guess, read a good chunk of like sociology type books. I picked it out primarily to be a buddy read with my friend Paul. Every so often we choose a book and we buddy read it, and it's more to give us something to like talk about rather than it being like necessarily a good quality book or a book whose like content we agree with. So this kind of fit that bill of something to talk about and like take apart, give our takes on the situation. I usually prefer more harm reduction based stuff, which is why this book maybe didn't align with that. So yeah, this book has 3 sections. I didn't love the middle section, if I can find out what it's called. Yeah, so this book has 3 sections. The middle section, part 2, is called Objects in Mirror Are Closer Than They Appear. I didn't love that section. That section seemed to take more of a cop / like policing take on the situation and a way to address the opioid epidemic, which I just kind of like disagree with. It also kind of became like, it felt like it became a like cop TV show detective type vibe, which I wasn't really expecting or like wanting in necessarily a like sociology book take on a situation. I did prefer when the final 3rd section came around, it started talking about like actual ways to address the like opioid epidemic and like stuff which is maybe more like proven by like facts and creating organizations and structures to actually like help people who are struggling with substance abuse. Another gripe that I had with this book is it seems to focus more on the parents of people with like substance use disorders or who are like using opioids in various forms rather than the individuals themselves, which I think is like a very skewed perspective and maybe not the one we should be looking at when trying to address a problem facing specific individuals, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on Dope Sick by Beth Macy. Yippee! The second book I read kind of went hand in hand with that. This was originally what we were considering to be, Paul and I, sorry, were considering to like buddy read. However, I ended up just reading this, in part due to like accessibility, because my library had this, and I don't think Paul could have gotten it from like a library or like easily digitally. So that was Revolting Prostitutes: The Fight for Sex Workers' Rights. I don't have many thoughts on this. It was a very, like, solid read. Like, pretty easy to get through. Like, it was written in an accessible manner in which, like, it felt like I was just chugging along with this book and reading it. Yeah, it's also, like, the authors very much, like, mention this, but it's, like, written from their perspective as sex workers in their situation, which I appreciated. And, like, I took this more as, like, I am reading one person out of this whole, like, population, what their opinion is on stuff that's happening. Which was good. I enjoyed it. I love learning a new perspective. Yeah, I don't have many thoughts, sorry. And then I read a book I listened to a book on audiobook. I'll put the cover here, but that was Queenie. And I enjoyed that book. It was a nice break from all the more sociology-themed reads. Though I guess it also deals with, like, racism in England, which is kind of sociology-based, not really a break from that, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it was, like, a nice story to follow because, like, the subject matter is not nice. But I did like the in-depth look at her life and the stuff she was dealing with. I also found, like, the reflections on abortion and parenthood very interesting, and I enjoyed that. A little bit of spoilers, by the way. Or not abortion, but, like, miscarriage. I found, like, the reflection of, like, I found her choice not to tell her ex-boyfriend very interesting. And it was nice to, like, look at the reasons influencing that decision. Yeah, moving on. So the last book I read this month was Girl Interrupted, by Susanna Kaysen. It's a pretty solid book. I read it because I've seen the movie and I wanted to get my hands on the book, just to read the quote-unquote source material from the film. It's not like the film at all. It's very much a look at her life and things about the hospital where she was institutionalized and, like, how things were run and the people she met and the interactions between them. The chapters are also very short, which meant I didn't necessarily, like, it wasn't my favorite read. I did really enjoy the last couple of chapters, though, where she's reflecting on her BPD diagnosis and the, like, diagnostic criteria used to make that decision of, like, diagnosing someone with the disorder, and how a lot of those criteria are subjective, and that, like, it is a flawed, quote-unquote, like, kind of flawed disorder to diagnose women with, especially, like, women who just generally might be struggling to, like, process something, or maybe not, like, women who maybe don't, like, conform to what society's expecting of them. And I thought that reflection was very interesting to read. And then finally we have the last book, which I didn't finish. It's kind of the book I'm currently reading. And so the book that I'm currently reading is Just Kids, which is the memoir of Patti Smith. I'm about a third of the way through and I'm really, really liking it. But I'm also kind of, like, a memoir nerd. And I know a lot of them don't write their own memoirs, but I just, like, love the writing style of memoirs so much. But this memoir I'm really loving. The writing style is so exquisite. It feels like I'm living in the era with them. Very flowery. Very much love that. Yeah, it's also a nice read because I haven't, like, I've listened to a few Patti Smith songs, but I feel like knowledge of her is just something that has been, like, missing from my world, so it's nice to get a look into, like, what her life was like. Yeah. So that's everything I've read in November. or am currently reading. Um, Next up for December, or I guess January now, is another buddy read that I have planned with Paul. We're planning on reading Against Techno-Ableism maybe, or maybe a fantasy book. We've been tossing around the idea of reading Left Hand of Darkness as well, because Paul is wanting to read some more like fantasy, not necessarily like magical realism, but like worlds where it is like a fantasy world, but it's kind of just treated like a world that exists. So if you have any recommendations for that, drop it and I'll give those to him. But yeah, other books that I am wanting to read. I hesitantly have All About Love by Bell Hooks on my TBR for months upcoming. We'll see how much I actually get through. Why is my light freaking out? So we'll see. Yeah, but right now reading Just Kids, gonna probably read Against Techno-Ableism or Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin. But yeah, that's kind of my next month planned. If you have any other recommendations, please leave them below. Excited for my first booktube video. Maybe you'll see more from me. Half the reason I did this was because I actually have the motivation to, because my semester is on a break. Yay. But I'm graduating soon, so maybe more videos in that future. Also, sorry that my cat is just completely grooming herself up there. We love her, that's Momo. Dee Dee is grooming herself over there on the couch, but you can't see that right now. Anyways, have a lovely rest of your day. I will see you in the next video. Bye!